Hello, it's The World According to Ali, episode 12, I think. Easter Sunday, 27th of March 2016. Question 1 from PJ Gentle is acting with compassion a strength or a weakness? I mean by that, should we always let someone off their bad actions if we feel sorry for them? Right, so let's go back into the gym. That's a question of two parts, really. So I'm just answering your question, PJ, in case you're wondering. So yeah, is compassion a strength or a weakness? See, from my point of view, compassion is a strength. I believe that. Yeah, it can make you maybe seem a bit soft or whatever, but generally compassion will drive you forward and lead you to do great things for people. And there's nothing wrong with that. On the other hand, letting someone off of their bad actions, that's not compassion. Compassion is just caring for someone. You know, if someone needs help, or you know, if they need to be, you know, looked after or something, that's compassion. You know, I'm all for that. But letting someone off of their bad actions, well, that's forgiveness. Airing into totally different territory there. I'm not very big on forgiveness. Generally because when people exhibit bad actions, depending on the framing of that bad action, I mean, you've got to put things into perspective. You know, like, is the bad action bad because they knew it was bad, or is the bad action bad because you felt it was bad? They thought they were doing something good, but you felt it was bad. So you get into all sorts of semantics here. But let's just say they knew it was bad, what they were doing. Letting someone off of the bad action, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of forgiveness. Because basically, people don't change. People do generally act the same. So if people act in a bad way, as in they knew it was bad, you know, there's malicious intent and stuff like that, they're probably going to do it again. So if you forgive that, you're probably allowing yourself to be like, you know, hit by that again. So yeah, compassion, good. Forgiveness, not a big fan of forgiveness. So yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts on the matter. Right then, question 2 from Justin Green. Is lifting weights and working out in general good for you in the long term? As in, will it result in knackered joints and arthritis when you get old? Right, back into the gym. Really good question. I'm just answering your question now, Justin. It's like everybody's here about arthritis and health in the long term and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting question about is lifting weights and all that sort of stuff good for you long term. Now, a lot of that comes down to the context of the quality of the movement. Yeah? If you do something badly, it's going to long term and short term screw you up, right? So, you know, things like ligament deformation is something that, you know, ligaments don't have a great elastic property, so once they go through it's plastic deformation, you know, stuff like that. So, like, lifting weights long term, if done correctly, in my opinion, is great, because you increase bone density, you increase connective tissue strength, you increase, you know, support from the musculature in the body and all that sort of stuff. In terms of arthritis, I mean, two main types. Obviously you've got rheumatoid, which, you know, there's not a huge amount of information about. Does weightlifting help rheumatoid arthritis? Don't know. I'm not sure that it does, because it's so degenerative that I'm not sure anything can help that side of it. Osteoarthritis. See, it is an interesting one. One of the things that I think about weightlifting in general is that you kind of want to minimise as much as you can the amount of repetitions you do for the training effect that you want to get. Yeah? So what you're looking at is, in my opinion, it's repetitions that cause wear and tear, not loading. So heavy weights, if done with an appropriate volume, won't cause as much wear and tear. You know, a lot of people that suffer from arthritis, they usually go through certain specific conditions. like a certain repetitive cyclic behaviour, certain conditions like operating in the cold and stuff like that. And usually the repetitions involved, when you can attribute something directly to causing arthritis, the repetitions are like a lot and in certain conditions. So if you can train in such a way that is good stimulus to the body, causes a continual progression and adaptation through overload, i.e. progress, yeah, then you can keep the body generating, you know, new tissue and, you know, stuff like that. And I think it's not just a case of not getting wear and tear, but then, you know, making the structure and the integrity of the skeleton in general better. Okay, I've had some horrific problems with my joints, and they're generally better now. You know, will that continue on? Like, who knows? But I generally think that if you keep on with the organic tissues that adapt, especially the muscles and the connective tissues and stuff like that, you know, I think that if you can keep that going, you know, you continue with good blood flow around, you know, the joints and so on and so forth, I think that is only healthy. I think one of the problems that comes in is then when people get into exercise that the overload is no longer there, and so it just becomes the same stimulus. So in other words, the body doesn't adapt anymore, it doesn't continue to adapt, and then it just becomes a wear and tear. You know, the body needs fresh stimulus all the time. This is why weightlifting is great if it's done sensibly and it's done progressively, because the stimulus is always there. Keep the body adapting, you know, keep the body improving. But also the blood flow as well is a big benefit. And all the benefits that you get from that, you know, of, like I said, the supporting muscles and the connective tissues being thicker and the bone density for things like osteoporosis. You know, I mean, that's not really dipping into arthritis, but osteoporosis is something that affects people with it being degenerative going into, you know, later years. So increasing, you know, your bone density, you know, is a big deal. So it's not just arthritis we're looking at, all of these long-term things that go on, you know, I think I'm going to plan to lift, be strong, be fit, and do crazy stuff until I drop dead, which hopefully isn't tomorrow. But yeah, I say it's all good, to be honest with you. So yeah. Right then, question 3. Question 3 is from Ali Crooks. After my vomit-inducing performance at the Rumble, what is an appropriate conditioning protocol to help me sustain my speed, strength and endurance? Back into the gym. You know, it's a wicked question, because this is like what I'm obsessed with, basically. My, you know, my ongoing theses of life. Because one of the things with the Rumble, it was a 20-minute round, multiple 20-minute rounds. You were expected to go, well, you were always expected to go, it's competition. Full speed, full power, everything, full tilt, yeah? And at the end of every 20-minute round, poor Ali Crooks, flat on the floor for about 30, 45 minutes, you know, whereas me, Kez and Leanne, just sort of like 2 seconds later, just drying our hair off, you know, so on and so forth. And that sparks questions. How do you prepare for that? So really kind of what you're asking is, what's the best way to go about making yourself stronger, making yourself faster, making yourself fitter, right? And a lot of people would probably assume that if you wanted to operate well at things like a Rumble fitness comp, that you would want to train like that. Ooh, that looks heavy, PJ. Yeah. Anyway, and no, you don't want to train like that. Not like that. I mean, like the competition aspect. The competition is an exhibition, expression, yeah, of that particular moment of what you can perform. To train like that, not a way to build. Okay. This is quite common in a lot of things. Is, yeah, you've got the law of specificity where, you know, can you operate, you know, like you need to? within the sport, within the competition, within whatever is demanding the performance. But the law specifically, like, applies to the competition. The competition's usually quite a short frame, a short snapshot of what you're doing. What you need more than that is general preparation. Okay, and in order to be able to build to any kind of specific peak of any kind, you need to have a very, very strong general base. Okay, and that general base is made up of two sort of main things. You've got aerobic capability, or aerobic power threshold. Right, silly camera cut out on me, didn't it? Right when I was speaking, I didn't realise. So I waffled on for a while before the lens went in and told me the camera wasn't on. So where was I? Yeah, you got two main things, right? Like I just said a while back. You've got aerobic capability, right? And you've got basically force production, alactic power, yeah? Aerobic capability is basically what can you do that is within your heart's capability to deal with, yeah? And this is everything, right? So a lot of people think aerobic capability is like just your cardio stuff, and it's not. All it refers to is that whatever you're doing, whatever demand you're placing on the body, is within the capability of your heart to sustain. And when you go anaerobic, all you've done is exceeded your heart's ability to pump blood around the body to keep up with whatever it is you're doing. Okay, so that includes you know, running, weightlifting, so on and so forth. And alactic power is just basically how much force can you produce, right? So then with alactic power, you're looking at heavy weights. How much heavy weight can you shift? How fast can you move? You know, speed, all sorts of stuff. How far can you jump? How far can you throw? So on and so forth. Okay, so you can do all of those activities of high force production aerobically, yeah, and if you repeat them enough, they go anaerobic. Okay, that's the way it is. Then lactate threshold, so you've got that alactic power, and then you've got lactate threshold, which is, you know, that burny feeling that you get. Nice and technical there. And again, lactate type energy systems, that does not fall within aerobic or anaerobic. Okay, so you can go into lactate energy systems and be aerobic. A lot of people would associate lactate, that feeling, that burny feeling, with anaerobic, but that's not right. A good example of that is cycling. You know, you can cycle like mad. Your legs will be like jelly, and yet your heart and lungs can be like, you know, you can be doing like 100 beats per minute. In other words, not much. Pulling a heavy sled backwards is a really good example as well of something that is heavily lactate but is purely aerobic, you know, because you'd stop and you wouldn't even be out of breath, but your legs would be jelly. So people get confused between the two, right? Now, generally what I think is that in your general prep, what you ideally want to be building towards is maximum force production with alactic power, okay, and the ability to stay aerobic. Okay, those two things. So obviously you have different expressions of power. So if you're, you know, looking to just lift heavy weights, then that's fine. But if you're looking to be able to move quickly, you need to be able to express that force production in a suitable way. So it is a good idea to, you know, work on that. But even so, generally what I believe is that when you're training, you want to stay aerobic, simply because well, there's a few reasons actually. I mean, one of the things about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic, I mean, I've already defined them. Aerobic is within the capability of your heart, anaerobic is beyond. You've exceeded the capability of your heart. If you stay aerobic, no matter what you're doing, you will recover in seconds. I mean like seconds, like boom. Yeah. If you go anaerobic, you will take minutes to recover, and probably lots of minutes, right? So whenever you're playing sport or performing or anything, you don't want to go anaerobic. Okay. My background was combat sports. Okay. And combat sports is like a perfect example of all of this. Okay, you needed to produce high force all the time. You can't hit people like 20%. They'll laugh at you and beat you up. So you need to be able to produce consistent, repeated, high amounts of force, yeah, against somebody who's trying to take your head off, right? And if you went anaerobic, you lost the fight. It's as simple as that. So you had to stay aerobic. As soon as you went anaerobic, you were over. You know, and unless they've also gone anaerobic, which you can do, you know, if you go anaerobic, you can drag people into that area with you, and then it's just a test of heart and guts and blah. But generally, if you go anaerobic, you're finished. You're not in a good place, and so that's a really good like motivator to not go anaerobic, is to have your head kicked in. So stay aerobic and generate as much power as you can repeatedly was the model for combat sports. But generally that's the model for all sports. You know, can you run super fast? Can you jump? Can you throw? You know, can you generate high amounts of force and stay aerobic? If you can do that, you will do whatever sport it is you're doing well, as long as you've got the skills as well. But in terms of general preparation, in terms of like your physical base, right, you can add the icing on top later. So that's performing in sport or competition. You don't want to go anaerobic. Now in training, a lot of people think that going anaerobic is great, you know, that whole vomit inducing thing and all that mess, right? Particular group of people that like that. Anyway, I don't believe that. I think that training and going anaerobic, in terms of the performance and the sport aspect, you take minutes to recover, and you know that's bad in sport. But in terms of training, I think if you go anaerobic, the recovery window is huge. I think it's much bigger. You basically take it, you've exceeded your heart's capability. So what you've basically done is you've exceeded your body. You know, you've gone past what your sensible limits are. And I think in training to do that is not wise, because I think the recovery factor of it is huge, and also you're taking a lot of stuff out of your systems. I think that if you go anaerobic in training, especially on a regular basis, you are, you know, running down systems because your body's exceeding physically. Then it's going to withdraw other things like immune system and stuff like that. So I think if you go anaerobic on a regular basis, not even on a regular basis, just in a short stint, I think you'll start to get ill, you know. This is not scaremongering, but I believe this stuff. You know, if you go anaerobic, I think you're going to tax your body too far, right? You're going to extend your recovery window, which means that your next training sessions won't be as good, right? And one of the things about training is that it needs to be able to be applied all the time. Yeah, if you rag yourself, then you can't apply yourself. Well, training's going to be a bit too like this, isn't it? Whereas what we want is this. And staying aerobic in training, no matter what you're doing, weightlifting, speed training, you know, and all that. But another aspect about going anaerobic is that it rags your technical ability. Okay, because when you go anaerobic, you've exceeded your body again. Technical stuff goes downhill. Okay, as well as the fact that other performance issues go downhill. You're not going to be able to lift as well. You're not going to be able to lift as heavy. You're not going to be able to move as fast. So staying within your aerobic threshold means that you actually produce maximum power, right? And that's good. And also technical considerations. You're able to move with better technique, yeah, if you stay aerobic. So really, I mean, some people are probably going to argue, yeah, but don't you want to ever like feel like that? You know, or just test yourself, whatever. Why would you need to? The other aspect as well is that if you train aerobically, you get better adaptations. Okay, training aerobically generally causes hypertrophy of the left ventricle, eccentric hypertrophy, sorry, which is basically an expansion of the important chamber, which increases stroke volume, which lowers your resting heart rate, which means that your heart pumps out more blood per beat. If you go anaerobic on a regular basis, you thicken the heart wall. Concentric hypertrophy, which is the standard sort of hypertrophy you associate with lifting weights, but to have that in your heart thickens your heart wall, okay, which can raise blood pressure and make it harder then later on to get the good adaptation of stretching the heart wall. So yeah, I would say don't perform anaerobically and don't train anaerobically, okay. Look at what you need to address, and you can address these things. I mean, like Ali Crooks' original question was about the rumble, but you know, you think to yourself, right, have I got a really strong aerobic base but am I relatively weak, or have I got a good strength base but my aerobic base needs addressing? And then obviously people will be crying out loud, oh, you know, you get weak and all this. No, you won't get weak. You can increase your aerobic capability and not get weak, and certainly not get weaker, right? You can be sensible about this stuff. You can manage your training stimulus, and you know what, you can get some really good adaptations with some small blocks, get in place some markers, measure stuff and improve it and increase it, and you'll reap the benefits. But yeah, so my thoughts on all of that stuff, you know, how do you increase strength? Well, you lift progressively heavier weights. How do you get faster? Well, you measure speed, and you also increase your strength, because increasing your strength and then learning to express it through speed is an important part of that. Explosive power is a genetic quality, so you can't really improve that, but whatever. And then fitness is, again, your ability to stay aerobic. So you know, improving your heart's capability to stay aerobic, and for you to then, you know, practice that is really important. So look after your heart and lungs, improve them, use markers. There's so much more really that can be talked about with this, but I'm already going on. But if you can then do your strength training and your speed training and stay aerobic as well, you will practice that, and you will learn through time. You will learn more and more and more and more and more where your edge is, so that you don't go anaerobic, okay? But also you should find that you can get to the point where you can blitz stuff, max speed, and you'll recover in seconds because you haven't gone anaerobic, and that's a big deal. So yeah, I think I've waffled on enough now. Well, I hope you've all had a great Easter. I've had a lovely time playing with Elia, and it's been great. And yeah, I shall see you all soon.